Okay, so in a similar fashion to the video that we had made a few days ago talking about the Habs and the Kraken, we gotta get talking about this particular conversation over here, because it's quite similar, but it's quite interesting too, because this is coming from the mouth of a GM himself, speaking out about the idea of the Montreal Canadiens and some very particular trade talk that we are going to be diving into here today. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've been making quite a few Philadelphia Flyers videos the past few days, and a lot of it has to do because of their new head coach. Not because of the draft picks, not because of some prospects that I think are interesting, but because of Rick Tocchet. And then there's the entire other conversation about whether or not he is going to ruin Matvei Michkov, but that's a conversation for another day. We can dive into that sometime later. Let's talk about the draft and the Philadelphia Flyers, who hold the 6th overall pick at the 2025 NHL Entry Draft. They have a pretty good spot. They didn't really do all too well this season, and they dropped 2 spots in the draft order because New York and Utah ended up winning lotteries. So they were 4th worst in the NHL this previous year. That is definitely not a team that Rick Tocchet would be happy to... Okay, we gotta stop throwing shade to Rick Tocchet. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a salty Canucks fan. What can I say? They're not great right now. And so, when we head over onto this article on TVA Sports from 3 days ago, Danny Briere's phone rings for the 6th overall draft pick. It does get into a pretty interesting discussion as to what conversations could surround that 6th overall selection. Let's dive into it here. Several teams appear to be interested in acquiring the 6th overall pick in the upcoming NHL draft. This article, by the way, it's going to be linked in the description. You can go out there and read it yourself. This was revealed by Philadelphia Flyers GM Danny Briere on Friday. His team has the final say, though, as to whether or not the draft pick will actually be moved. It's already started. We are starting to converse with other teams. We're having little chats here and there, said Briere when Jean-Charles Lajoie asked him if other clubs were calling him to inquire about the price to pay for that draft pick. What's interesting for us is that we also have 2 other picks in the top 20 of the first round. We have 4 picks in the first half of the second round. In the top 48, we have 7 selections. Bruh. I didn't even realize that was the case, but upon further review, yeah, that is the case here. The Philadelphia Flyers have the Colorado Avalanche's first-round pick in the 2025 NHL Draft, and they have the Oilers' first-round pick. Puckpedia shows that these picks were acquired by Philadelphia in a pick-for-pick swap last year at the draft, as well as the Sean Walker trade from last year too. So the Flyers absolutely locked and loaded up on draft picks for the 2025 NHL Draft, and they have 4 second-round picks this year too. They're doing crazy work, that Danny Briere Philadelphia Flyers team. So, with this in mind, you can make the argument that says, hey, you guys got a ton of picks. You don't necessarily need to use them all, right? One could stand to question whether or not it would be possible the Flyers decide to trade one of them for a bigger piece, either a roster player who can help them out now or something else. You know, those are really the only 2 things that you could feasibly get. Really, I mean, they're not going to trade away any of these draft picks for draft picks in the future, I would assume, because you're not going to bet on getting a pick higher than 6th overall in any given season. You would want to see your team do better than that. So going back to the article here, yeah, 7 picks in the first 48 picks. That's really great. It's very interesting. We're going to look at all our options. Maybe we'll move forward or maybe we'll move backward. We can look for players who could come in and help us faster than draft picks. All options are on the table. The host of the JIC show took the liberty of asking if the Canadiens were among the teams that had called Briere. No, not yet. I haven't heard anything about the Canadiens, but it's coming, Briere replied. We'll talk. Now, I'll admit this article is French translated into English. There might be some sort of lost in translation thing here. I'm not too sure if the piece is fully encapsulating the energy, the vibes, or even the words that Danny Briere speaks about here in regards to the Montreal Canadiens and them potentially calling him up. But it is interesting to hear Briere say, yeah, I haven't spoken to the Habs. Kent Hughes hasn't called me. But it's gonna happen. We will talk. Okay, Briere just confirmed that he's gonna go out there and start talking trades with the Canadiens. Yeah, like that's literally what he did here. And in particular, when it comes to that 6th overall pick, there are some conversations to be had about what options exist for both teams here. And I say this because it's piggybacking off of the conversation we had the other day about the Kraken and the 8th overall pick, about whether or not the Canadiens could be interested in getting involved in some sort of a trade. The Habs themselves have had a bunch of draft picks too, so it's not really the most projectable plan if you want to just say, oh yeah, just get a whole bunch of draft picks every single year and then we'll be fine. At some point, you gotta start contending. At some point, you gotta say, all right, we got enough young dudes in the system. We got enough young assets that are good enough to help us be competitive. So let's start trying to win now. And maybe that time is now. Your time is up. My time is now, Montreal is saying to the rebuilding gods. And the Philadelphia Flyers 6th overall pick, if there's a really nice prospect to be had, I'm gonna say Caleb Desnoyers, since that's the name that everybody seems to be linking to the Montreal Canadiens. If there's a really nice name like that available at the 6th overall spot, Philadelphia is willing to give it up because they have a ton of picks. Montreal's like, okay, here's a roster player. Or here's a really good prospect that's on the heels of becoming an NHLer. Give us that draft pick. We'll give you 16 and another prospect and then somebody else, I guess, for 6th overall. Something like that. I'm just spitting. But I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of Montreal making a trade for the 6th overall pick from the Philadelphia Flyers? Do you think this is a move that should be explored? Do you think there is a prospect or two that the Montreal Canadiens should target? And do you think that Philadelphia would be willing to tango? Might I remind you, this trade is a little bit beefier than what we had seen out of the Kraken because the Kraken trade would have been for 8th overall. The Flyers have the 6th overall pick. It's a bit better here. But different strokes for different folks, different team circumstances. Danny Briere went out there and openly admitted that, yeah, the pick could be in play. Who knows? There's a lot of flexibility here, it seems like. So with that in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Flyers fans, Canadiens fans, what are your opinions about making some sort of a trade for this 6th overall pick? The Habs have the 16th and 17th overall picks. I'm not too sure if the Flyers would be too keen on trading down, but that is an option here. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.